Good morning, doctor. Welcome back.
Good morning, Venkatesh. Nice to be back.
Great, great. So I'll introduce the topic as always, and then we can move on. Yeah.
Right, right.
Changing gears a little this time. We've been talking at a fairly philosophical level for the past many sessions. We thought we'd get down to a little more immediately practical things we can do about our wellness, and which we have been discussing is about balance. One of them is having a hobby, and that hobbies are one of the best ways to get balance in our life, and it can be fun. And therefore, the title of today's talk, which is that hobby balance is fun. So, over to you, doctor.
Okay. Thank you, Venkatesh. Actually, it must have taken a lot of courage for you to utter the word hobby because in today's world where it is 24 by 7 or even more than 24 by 7, and global CEOs keep calling for meetings at 2 a.m. in the morning, and there are people who say you cannot live unless you sacrifice your sleep or rest or whatever.
Right.
And the world is getting harsher and harsher. And the tone is set by over-ambitious, you know, over-ambitious people. Whether they
Right.
are executives or not is another issue.
Right.
There are people who say that, if you sleep at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or even 11 o'clock, you are a fool.
Right.
Sorry to use the wrong word, but, they say you are not fit for management world or something.
Right.
Well, I beg to disagree there
Correct.
because the good old theme of 8 by 8 by 8 for a daily cycle
Right.
still holds.
Correct.
And you can still live with that. But if you
Yeah.
don't want to do that, you just want to shift the blame onto your leisure time or sleep time or whatever. So this is
Right.
the antithesis of what was really meant.
Right.
And actually, God created man with the notion of, excuse me, the notion of having a day off,
Right.
Sabbath, the day off was created by God, ordered by God.
Right.
And you may laugh at the whole thing, but
No.
the importance of having one day off was appreciated then, and it is all the more appreciated so now.
Correct.
And today, everybody who is somebody wants to prove that he is holier than the others, and he wants to push in more and more of working hours with less and less of leisure time.
Right.
Leisure doesn't mean a bad thing, as you will see presently.
Correct.
So, hobby balance is fun.
Correct.
There is a proverb. Yeah, yeah. Any comment, Uncle?
No, absolutely. I think we this comes back to that even your productivity, your work, all of that, which we will discuss soon, is better from having a balanced life rather than just doing too much of any one thing, whether it be work or anything else. Yeah. So,
Right.
which brings us to this proverb. Absolutely.
Yeah. And in the executive world, to complete that theme, people go by the number of hours you put in.
Right.
Nobody bothers about the quality of the thing that you put out.
Right.
And I'm sure, 100% sure, anybody who is somebody knowing with some idea of biology will
Correct.
say that it's not good at all. In fact, a
Correct.
little bit of a humbug.
Correct.
So, so we'll refer quickly back to the proverb and then move on. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And this
Correct.
is not an old-fashioned grandma or somebody cribbing. In fact, grandmas have different views and better views also sometimes.
Right.
So that's why, yeah, Venkatesh, back to you.
Yeah. No, this all of this comes back to, so I think leaving the executive world and what statements they may make aside for a minute, effectively needing balance is something we've been discussing throughout the series. And effectively this proverb touches on the point that also extends to the ratio of work and play, to a point we made and you just made long ago about the 888, that it's not just about sleep, it is also about 8 hours of recreation and refreshment of your mind and faculties. And that's what play is, right? So,
Yeah,
absolutely.
right. So there is an erroneous assumption or a presumption that if you are not doing anything, you are
Right.
only doing time pass, which
Correct.
may be partly true, but leisure is not time pass,
Right.
or the biblical 8 by 8 by 8,
Right.
slogan or, Sabbath, etc.
Correct.
is not merely time pass. It is meant to charge up your battery
correct,
and do done and dusted, what we say, take your battery and clean it off, dust it off, so that your battery is ready for another better round of work. So it
got it,
is not time pass, it is not negative, it is not
correct,
just idling. Next
correct,
slide, please. Now let's look at hobby a little closer.
correct.
A hobby is an activity done. Now, this itself is an anathema to many people. You know,
Right,
you can't have an activity and you can't have a hobby and you can't have 24/7. All that doesn't make sense put together. But by and large, the definition of hobby is that it is an activity done regularly. Now, it is an activity is a punch word, and
correct,
regularly is another punch word
correct,
in one's leisure time, if there is any leisure time left at all by the executive world. I want to repeat this because the emphasis is more on business world, executive world, than a day-to-day living of a family. You know,
right,
so that will remain there. I don't think it's going to change for another whatever number of years. So hobby is an activity, and it is done regularly, and it is done in leisure time,
right,
and it is done for pleasure. Now, there are four loaded words
right,
which will define how you spend your time in a day. Any
correct.
comment? Venkat? Yeah,
No, this is very important. And I think, again, we made this point earlier, the executive world, management world, there will always be pressures. If there were not executive world pressures, there were the pressures 200 years ago of war or of the pressures of slavery. Point is a different one. The point is, we have always discussed at the individual level that we can do something to control our own wellness, even in difficult circumstances. And whatever leisure time we have, that's how I'm reading this statement. It is
right,
important for us to structure it into something which is activity based. We'll understand why activity based and get the benefits of some activity outside of the work that we do on a day to day basis. Correct? I
right.
think that is what a
Abs-
hobby is. A hobby is not passive, as I guess you're just about to discuss.
Absolutely, absolutely. Next slide, please.
Yeah,
So the question is of what is active and what is passive.
right,
And you take passivity to the extreme and go to sleep. Sleep is the
right.
best passive you can think, but it doesn't work that way. So active doesn't mean that going and hammering away things, here and there. So it is to be understood in that sense.
Correct,
It should be in conformity with your reference of whatever you are doing actively or passively.
correct.
Even if you are doing something passive, your brain, your body, mind, and soul can be active, etc.,
God,
etc. We'll
God,
see that.
absolutely. And which is why I guess in that 888, coming back to that 888 balance of the pie chart of time, the
Right,
8 on leisure is not the same as sleep. Sleep is
right,
different from leisure, is a very
right,
important point for all of us to remember. And to that extent, also, that leisure is not about just another form of, let's say, resting your body. It is about recharging, and it's an active process, and the active process has some meaning, which I guess you're about to take us through.
right, right. So being creative is not a hobby, it is a way of life. Now, there are people who mistake being creative with hobby and what all
Correct,
permutations and combinations you can
correct,
imagine of creativity, hobby, and life. But basically, if you are a creative person, you
right,
can be highly creative in qualitative terms. Mind you, the importance is qualitative terms. If you
correct,
are worried only about quantitative output in
correct,
creativity, then you are
correct,
not going to get anywhere. You should be
correct,
creative, even when you are just, for example, you are just thinking. I'll give the example of Mahatma Gandhi.
correct,
He used to go on long walks on Porbandar beach,
correct,
and he was doing nothing but just stepping back and forth.
correct,
But the quality of his decision taken during those walks was
correct,
enormous.
correct,
And even the Queen of England or the King of England had to bow before that. And
correct,
they had to acknowledge that ahimsa was a powerful weapon and it
correct,
is creativity at its best, you
correct,
know,
correct.
etc. Next slide, please.
So before we move here, one observation on the first two, and I'll want you to speak about that. I guess there is a clear physiological process behind an active hobby, right? And which
Right,
is
right,
that you get a chance to sort of almost rearrange your thoughts. You get to look at things differently. An active hobby allows you to sort of lose yourself in deliberate practice, right? Doing something
Right.
in a constant way. Maybe just touch on that, doctor.
Well, it's all a combined thing, as you yourself rightly said.
Right.
Creativity, hobby, productivity, and in between, woven in with periods of comparative
Stepping back,
inactivity.
correct. Stepping
So
back and letting the patterns emerge.
all that blends together. So you cannot isolate creativity from hobby and so
Correct.
forth. It is all blended in your body, your brain, and your adrenal glands, particularly adrenal glands and the pituitary glands. They play a major role in integrating everything, integrating body, integrating mind, and integrating soul. And that is where the things stand as of today. And
Correct.
of course, pretty soon we'll have totally new ideas of work and hobby
Correct.
in uh, quantum physics or terms. There are
Or in the
quantum physics,
context of AI, etc. Correct.
yeah, and so forth. Yeah,
Yes, you were saying about hobby turns a successful career up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, if you are good at everything, at anything at all,
Right.
if you take it up and pursue it rather vigorously, if not aggressively, you can convert it into a career. It
Right.
automatically happens. You don't need to chase a career going out of your hobby. You do your hobby well, and you do it well, and you keep doing it well, then there is a potential for a career opportunity there. You
Got it.
know, it
Which I
happens.
correct, correct.
Yeah,
Which I guess nowadays a lot of people related to the Japanese concept of ikigai, which is that
yeah,
do what if you do what you like and you keep doing it better and better, your hobby and your work can merge into each other.
absolutely, absolutely. So it is not theory, it's not a play of words, it is actual reality. Another small point, I consider it small points because habits are a different cup of tea, but
Right.
habit hobbies all sort of not, if not merge exactly, but they blend, in a
Interrelated. Yeah, they are
subtle,
interrelated.
very subtle way.
Correct.
And if you have a good habit, it becomes a good hobby.
Correct.
And if you have a good hobby, you automatically develop good habits.
Yes, yes. No,
So,
in fact, this is a very powerful example, for example, of what I think you do, that music is both a habit and a hobby now for you. That for 50
right,
years, you haven't missed a day of practice. And then that allows you every day, and to your definition, you said the four loaded words, a regular activity. And a regular
right,
activity requires a habit to be formed so that you come back to it every day, whether you're quite feeling like it or not. Then you make
right.
progress, and then on the other days, you feel like doing it as a result, right?
Absolutely,
Same thing
absolutely.
for exercise, I guess, right? An exercise can
Yeah,
start off as a habit and then it can get to a place where it's actually a hobby almost. You're continuously
yeah,
fine tuning it and seeing how to do it in different circumstances.
quite right,
A
quite right.
very good point. Very good point. Yeah.
Good. Now, here is a scattergram of what all can be considered as hobbies.
Correct.
Mhm. If you ask somebody on the road, what is your hobby? He may not have an answer.
Right.
And on the contrary, he may say, my hobby is to run to catch a train or something. It may be made look frivolous, but it is not.
Right.
Many people even today consider reading as a hobby,
Correct.
and it is becoming more and more justifiable because of the packed lifestyle and schedules that we have to live with.
Correct.
And you read, and that read to break the monotony and vice versa.
Correct.
So reading is still an important part.
Correct.
With the advent of computers, reading, apart from that, you say screen time,
Correct.
screen time, screaming time, if you like,
Correct.
that takes over, but it's still reading.
Correct.
The human mind and the brain take in a lot of things through reading, because even when you are doing a computer, you are reading something
Correct.
as of now. Tomorrow,
Right.
day after tomorrow, we don't know. Feely and
Correct.
everything will
Correct.
enter the picture.
Correct.
And there's time for that. For most of the general population, reading
Correct.
is a vital aspect of doing anything at all, even including using the computer.
Correct.
Yeah. So you can have tennis, you can have fishing, you can have cricket, you can have chess, you can have whatever. And above all, the easiest way to get into this is to read.
Correct.
And reading right from the newspaper, you will be surprised that the potential of newspaper reading
Correct.
has not gone away.
Correct.
And in fact, some of the
Absolutely.
best brains are using that.
Correct.
Yeah. Any comment, Anku?
No, absolutely. I think it's a very good point you made because, again, coming back to sort of what we are defining as a hobby, something that you can actively engage in, which takes your mind away from your work, or just your what you do for a living. And
Right.
I think if you just look at this diagram, as you said, of activities, of course, sports is one, arts are another, but even reading, at least reading something outside of your work immediately starts to open up your mind. You are able to engage with something outside of work itself, sort of creates new patterns in your brain, right? So, absolutely,
Absolutely.
it's very accessible to everyone. You don't have to
Right.
wait for something very big. It's available. You can start to read anything.
Right.
But at least reading is also a very good tool. Very good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the concept of satsang is becoming important, in managing your spare time. In
Right.
the spare time, you can while away drinking, single malt, or drinking away your glasses and glasses of beer. You
Right.
know, so somehow things do degenerate into this level of
Right.
being in. If you ask somebody, how are you? They'll say, I'm fine, I'm enjoying. They'll say the next word is enjoying, as if you can't live without enjoyment. And that's another thing we have to look at. Satsang is reduced to cocktail parties and gossip mongering sessions and backbiting sessions and so forth. Whereas satsang is what the word means. Sat is good, sang is company. You have
Correct.
to have good company. And we do exactly the opposite in a cocktail party. Our company is bad, and not only bad for your mind, it is bad for your liver and so forth. So satsang is not a drinking session.
Correct.
So
Correct. Correct.
satsang also, it is not just down to say, every Thursday evening you sit and beat your jalra or something. That is also not satsang, because your
Correct.
mind is wandering. You know,
Correct.
Kabir said, Mala jo karme fire, jeeb fire mukh mahi. Your
Right.
hand, your rosary is rolling. Huh? Jeeb fire mukh mahi. Your tongue is going round and round. Manava to dahu disi fire. Your mind is wandering in 10 directions. Ye to sumiran nahi. So Kabir said, even in his days, people were busy counting the rosary beads and just doing these physical things, whereas your mind is wandering always everywhere.
Correct.
And that is not satsang. But your satsang can be improved and improvised and added value to if
Correct.
you learn how to control your mind, which is
Correct.
another cup of tea which you have been seeing.
Correct.
Satsang is a very important part of hobby. I still believe that, you may appear to be doing nothing. You may
Right.
appear to be just sitting, excuse me, sitting with your friends,
Right.
and the output of that can be tremendous. So satsang is a vital
Very,
thing. I just
very good
no
point.
money. These good points are there. Don't require any money. Reading, for example, reading requires a book maybe,
Correct.
but that doesn't mean that you have to take a huge Ramayana kind of a thing. You
Correct.
read.
Correct.
You read the newspaper with a creative, inquisitive mind. That is satsang in a way, etc., etc.
I
Next
think
slide,
a
please.
very important point, again, just as I sort of collect these points for all of us, the two parts that just having, if your hobby can combine interacting with other people in a positive way, right?
Right,
That itself
right.
can be satsang. Satsang need not be spiritual or religious. Satsang is good company done together itself can be invigorating. Second,
Very true.
and which is very interesting, and why it suddenly occurred to me. Sometimes, if you are not feeling like doing something, actually, when you have company or you have a group with whom you have to do it, it's a positive forcing mechanism, right? Otherwise, let's say you would have said, and which is why I guess some people run together, walk together, sing together. Uh, if you have somebody who is a partner in your activity with you, and that activity is a good, constructive, positive activity, that itself is a form of satsang, is what you are saying, is how I took it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just by being together, even without uttering a word, you can
Yes,
send out positive vibes. And don't laugh at the word vibes. You have to interpret it
absolutely.
correctly.
It
You
makes a lot of sense.
know.
Yeah, vibes is a informal term for, I guess, the interactive energy that ends up
Yeah.
happening, right? Yeah.
That is why the quantum physics things come, no? Quantum physics is addressing all these prayers, etc., etc. And okay, now switching gears, in
Right.
modern terms, you can have a hobby where you
Right.
play game, on-screen
Right.
games you keep playing, and there are people who keep playing it around the clock, 24 by 7 by 365 or whatever,
Right.
and they appear to be busy on the computer screen, whereas they are indulging themselves and others into negative vibes of games. And these games can be so intoxicating that you'll get more and more addicted as you go along. And that
Correct.
will eat into the veracity of your brain activity.
Correct.
And that's an addiction which is worse than opium. So that should not be a hobby. I'm mentioning it here because many people
Correct.
mistake hobby to be playing computer games, whereas it is actually poisoning your mind. And because I'm saying poisoning because there is an addictive element. If you don't
Right.
play this way or that way, you are not happy and so forth. So
Correct.
that addiction has to be kept in mind and it should be kept under control.
Correct.
And online gaming is the worst form of intoxicant apart from alcohol. Now, alcohol has lost its significance. If you say I drink, you'll say, ha, big deal, I also drink. Whereas if you say I play computer games, you'll say, oh my God, he's a computer genius, and so forth. This indirect way of distorting mentation is
Correct.
something that you have to guard against. So games addiction should never be part of your leisure. So this is my submission. I may be wrong. And any
Yeah.
comments on Cook?
Exactly. I think addiction by definition is an excess and is an uncontrolled excess. And
Right,
anything that is going to cause you to do excess rather than do things in balance is by
right,
definition inimical to you. Games,
absolutely.
like anything else, can have a place. Not all games can be bad or violent. There can be games that help with reflexes for people. There are games that help you learn things, but it has to be kept in balance. And I guess what you are saying is the kind of obsessive compulsion with games to the exclusion of all else.
Right,
Because that risk is there, you have to be very careful with something like online gaming and calling it a hobby. It can
right,
turn into an addiction. Yeah.
right. Very true. Now, here is a simple example of a harmonium, what we call as peti. You know, it's a very simple instrument, but it is good for you because you can create music. You'll say, "Oh,
Correct.
what is it? Can you create music?"
Correct.
Well, there is a way of using this harmonium.
Correct.
And even if you don't know anything about music or classical ragas or anything at all, you don't have to be using a karaoke or whatever.
Right.
You can take this simple instrument. Of course, it costs some 500 rupees as an investment.
Right.
But if you just play with it, just play with the keys,
Correct.
you know, you'll suddenly strike a frequency or a balance somewhere that you'll be surprised that you produce that sound, produce a
Correct.
sound energy.
Correct.
No, it is a sound energy which is available easily and it can be improved upon. It can be made more sophisticated with the help of some knowledgeable people. But
Correct.
it is very easy. It doesn't require electricity and it doesn't require too much of anything. You just take a
Correct.
harmonium and start playing.
Correct.
And you'll be surprised. You'll be graduating into accordion and finally to other forms of entertainment. And
Correct.
at the same time, knowledgeable entertainment.
Correct.
Your
One of
mind can
the
get.
sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the really powerful things about music, like you just mentioned, is that the activity gives you some form of immediate creative feedback, right? You play
Right,
something, you hear a sound, you feel the pleasure of it, you sort of try to see how to make it better. So it does two things. It gives you a feedback, it gives you something that you can work with and improve upon, which is accessible to all of us. And also it's very, in that sense, primordial. All of us have
right,
music in us. It can be rhythm, it can be tunes, but since it's part of us, that's why all of us can benefit from music very, quite actively is one very good point. I think a second
right,
point that comes out of this is, and which you of course mentioned, an instrument. So there are, in another time when we focus on music, we can do a session that focuses on music. There are so
right.
many neurological benefits of playing something, etc. Especially as you grow older, that helps a lot. But let's
Yeah,
say instead of playing an instrument, you sing like you do, right? There
yeah,
are other
yeah.
benefits, and like for example, and you can actually speak to that. The breathing, uh, all of the other stuff that goes with it. Singing itself is one of the most accessible. You don't even need an instrument. You can just start
Right,
to try to sing.
right, right. Very true. The powerful impact of music on human psyche
Correct.
deserves a separate individual treatment, which
Correct.
we will do hopefully sometime.
Correct. Yes.
Next slide, please. Here is a little bird. It looks very cute, and you can just watch it. That can be a hobby. The
Yeah. Yeah.
bird is
Absolutely.
you're doing nothing. You're just watching it.
Correct.
And there is philosophy in it, in some
Correct.
Upanishads. people say your mind is like a bird watching another bird. You know,
Correct.
there's enormous degree of philosophy in this. One bird watching another bird, etc., etc. Now, whatever it is, bird watching by itself is a highly sophisticated hobby, and
Correct.
it is not an easy hobby at all, because by the time you get ready with your camera, the bird has flown away. You
Yeah.
know, you have to wait till the bird steadies itself to be photographed by you.
Correct.
That's a bit of a tall order. So
Correct.
your
Teaches you
bird will.
patience. Yeah, teaches you a lot of patience, and you have to calm yourself to watch it. And you need not even photograph it. You can just watch it. Right.
Right, right, true.
I
So that's
think
a good
this,
hobby.
yeah, it's a very good hobby, doctor. In fact, you touch on something very important, which is I don't know, maybe it's the next slide, which is just being in nature is a very, very good hobby because it can,
Right.
is that the next slide? I remember. Yes, I think you, maybe this is the point that you
Yeah,
wanted to make here, doctor. Yeah, please go ahead.
right. So you can hear you're alone in the whole big universe, let it be a big bad world or a nice warm universe, you are alone and you are interacting with the universe and imbibing something, chilling out something, you're interacting. Although it may appear to be nothing, it's a very important interaction. You can smell the whatever flowers that are in the garden, or you can just be part of nature,
Correct.
and that itself is a great nature watching exercise for
Rejuvenation. Yeah, you get
yeah,
really rejuvenated by that.
recreation. Or you can get lost in this. You can spend hours on end
Correct.
just watching nature and being with nature. That's a
Correct.
very important hobby, because that teaches you also philosophy. As you go along, you observe your own thinking,
Correct.
and you refine your own thinking, which you can't do in the company of boisterous alcoholics, and so forth. So next slide, please.
In fact, there are certain, like for example, we live in Maharashtra, both of us, and the concept of bhatkanti, which is that
Yeah,
just go to nature and roam without a purpose,
right,
is an interesting way of giving expression to this hobby. For those who
right.
may feel that, oh, that means I have to go away, far away, sometimes it may just mean going to your local garden and or sitting and looking actively out of your window at a tree. All of that
Right.
is part of this, right? It need not be that you have to go to some Kulu Manali each time. Nature
Absolutely.
is at hand in very simple ways.
Right. Now, here is another dimension of leisure. It's a little more complicated, a little more elaborate, but it is closely connected with our way of living,
Correct.
you know. And if you are living somewhere, you have to clear the ground near that. It's as simple as that. You
Correct.
can't be living on a heap of, junk or something. So you just sit somewhere and you clean your environment of, say, 2 meter radius or 2 3 meter radius, and then it's a hobby. You'll say what nonsense, but it is a hobby because you are just cleaning yourself bodily and mentally, and that is how the concept of swachhata came. So even our rishis and munis in the good old days spent a little time and little, in fact, enormous amount of time cleaning up the place where you want to do something. In
Correct.
Ramayana, you see Vishwamitra came and took away Rama and Arjuna, Krishna,
Lakshmana.
no, not
Lakshmana.
Krishna,
Rama and
Lakshmana,
Lakshmana. Correct.
Lakshmana, just to clean the forest of their, that intrusion by thieves and by dacoits and so forth. That itself was a great exercise.
Correct.
And Vishwamitra was there to guide them.
Correct.
And he taught the importance of Swachhata. And
Correct.
Swachhata started that way. And Swachhata Seva became a rage very soon, rather. And there could be some political support for that, or even without political support. Swachhata is an important ingredient of your very existence. So, so
No,
the
and in fact,
Swachhata.
sorry. Yes, doctor,
Go
you were saying.
ahead, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So I was saying that actually that's a very good point. That activities that seem like our day-to-day activities, cleaning our house or cleaning our surroundings, can
Right,
become part of a hobby if, and we can look at it that way. I know there are
right,
some in a previous. I remember at some point you were discussing this with someone and like, how can this be a hobby? This is a different thing. But
right,
the truth is that anything that you engage with meaningfully, and a very interesting thought came to me from seeing this slide, that if you
right,
think about a lot of things that the Japanese seem to promote as hobbies, right? It will be
right, right,
arrangements, right? They're just arranging the tea, they are arranging their surroundings, and they lose themselves in it completely. And it's
Right.
about that. I guess a hobby is about losing yourself in an activity outside of your mainstream of work, and
Right.
all the neurological and physical benefits of that separation. So very good addition, doctor, to this, which brings us,
Right.
of course, to the last slide. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this Swachhata thing can be an integral part of a very major, impactful, globally relevant entity called corporate social responsibility. Now, this is it's a huge thing, and millions and billions of dollars are being spent on this CSR, all for the benefit of mankind.
Right.
And you benefit mankind in any which way you want or you care or you can or whatever.
Right.
So corporate social responsibility would mean everything. Your environment, the way you live, the way you eat, the way you behave, etc., etc. It's a very major entity, and a
Correct.
lot of people make their career also out of that. In fact, I myself spent some time in corporate social responsibility, and I gained a lot.
Correct.
And whether the corporate element is there or not, it becomes a habit for you,
Correct.
and you call it a habit or a
Then it need
hobby.
not depend upon a corporate. No, I mean, it's a perfect
Correct.
example that you can buy the corporate element can enable you to do it as part of how you shape your career, or what
Right.
a new word for it people use is impact, right? Impact work
Right.
or social impact. But it's both. That is one way of doing it in a group or in a career setting, and the other is it seva itself becomes part of what you do constructively daily in a regular way, with or without the corporate part, is also a very good habit and a hobby.
Right. Very true. Very true. So, as Venkatesh rightly said, all aspects of living can be touched by corporate social responsibility. What you eat, what you speak, what you don't eat, etc., etc. So, there maybe we can devote a
We
session
can
on
talk,
CS.
yeah, we can talk about the healthy part of seva, and the different forms that seva can take. It can be individual, it can be collective outside of a corporate setting, it can even be correct, in a corporate setting.
Right, right. So, next slide, please. I
Perfect.
think that's the last slide.
Thank you
So,
so much, Doctor. This has been a wonderful session, and I think a change from what we've been discussing for a while. We've
right,
been discussing sort of things at a philosophical and spiritual plane. This is something which is another type of big enabler for us, is what I'm taking away from this talk.
right,
Basically having balance means rejuvenating your body and mind by doing something outside of work. It's not the same as sort of passively doing something passively or just sleeping. It's about doing something actively. You get a bunch of benefits, both physical and mental, by doing something active, and that's what a hobby
right,
is, right? And
right,
that's
right.
a very important part of rejuvenating ourselves. Can be part of
Yeah.
how we interact with others as well constructively. Is what we heard from your doctor. Thank you so much, and look forward to the next one.
Yeah, thank you for a good summary and a good supplementation of thoughts and whatever concepts. So
Thank
thank
you,
you.
doctor. Take care. See you next time.
Thank you.